quick sweep to see that you're all looking very good before we make a start.
Thank you.
And handing over to John, who's got the best date for this in the calendar. So
when Sean asks you to do a learning and teaching briefing, I suggest you just check the calendar very quickly to make sure it's not the morning after a parents' evening, on Christmas jumper day, a week before the end of the longest term of the year. If I'd thought about it more carefully to start with, I might have reconsidered. I'm going to talk about teaching from memory. So in this terminal exam kind of culture that we're moving towards, I think more and more it's really important that we try and incorporate memory strategies into lessons and try and help pupils memorise information as we go through. So to that note, I'm going to try and do the whole thing without looking at the screen. So Sean's going to change the slides for me. There's little notes in the bottom right-hand corner, little words that relate to something that's going to help me hopefully not refer to any notes during the course of this. So if you can work out what those are, then that's an extra little challenge for you as we go through. Right, as far as I can see, pupils often struggle to find the best way to rev eyes. Okay? So often they will just take revision for being reading, particularly out of a revision guide, because we tend to just send them home with a revision guide and expect that to do the job. But often that's not the most effective strategy for them to take. All right, now what I need to try and do is persuade you to take the time in your lessons to model how to revise effectively. Okay? I can see James getting very excited about Airfix there. And we all have a huge amount of content to get through. We have a huge amount to teach our students. So taking the time out to try and memorise things during lesson can feel a bit onerous. And often, traditionally, we've sent the kids home with stuff and said, learn that, revise that, that's your homework, learn it at home. But I don't think they often know how to do that. Go on, Sean. So this is like the Stephen Hawking paradox for me. Okay, just like many good teachers, I can read a good book by Stephen Hawking, and what he can do is he can lay out this little trail of breadcrumbs, these little Lego blocks, and then he can construct them into something amazing. Calm down, Neil. Yes, it is a Lego Death Star, but you'll be okay. He can help me to construct something amazing, and I can think, this is brilliant. That's actually changed my view of the world and the universe. It's changed the model with which I work. And then I go to sleep, and I wake up in the morning, and I can't remember a thing about what I read the day before, however magical it felt at the time. And I think this is the situation our pupils often find themselves in. We've got some brilliant teachers in this school. You logically sequence your lessons, you lay out your breadcrumbs, and at the end of the lesson they get something out of it. They join those blocks together and they have that moment of understanding where you are mentally high-fiving yourself for a job well done. And then you walk in the following day and you think, I'm going to relive that moment a little bit, and I'm just going to remind the students how well they did last lesson. And you ask them to explain it, and they look at you as though you are speaking to them in a foreign language. And trust me, recently I've gained a lot of experience about not understanding what anyone is saying in a classroom. So it's kind of trying to tackle that. And often I think what the problem is it's not that those pupils can't put those blocks together. They're the same pupils you taught the day before. It's just that those blocks were so insecure in the first place, and they haven't got them to actually reconstruct into that bigger picture. Okay, they've lost those Lego blocks between one lesson and the next. So you have to take them through the whole process of rebuilding again. All right, so hopefully what we need to try and do is we need to try and secure those Lego blocks as we move along, those basic ideas, so that then when we ask them to do more complex things with them, they can do it and they can remember it and they can build it back up again themselves. Go on, Sean. Where are we? We're in the dining room. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to... What is there? There's some tools, and there's an address, and there's revision, and what's the little picture at the front? I can't remember. Right, okay, so what we need to try and get them to do is develop effective tools, okay, to address the weaknesses in their revision. So we have to try and model for them how to revise effectively, and there's a couple of really important strategies for that. One of them is we need to try and remove as many words as possible. Okay, we need to try and take the words out. Your brains are rubbish at learning words. They're brilliant with pictures and images. It's a survival, it's an evolution thing. Okay? Remembering words hasn't been important for our survival. Remembering people's faces, locations, those sorts of things have. So take out as many words as you can. You also need to then try and turn words into pictures. Okay? So those two little strategies can really make a big, big difference if you're going to take the time to try and get your pupils to memorise information as you go along. I'm not suggesting you do this every lesson. Okay, but for those things that are really, really fundamental, you might want to go to a special effort. Go on, Sean. For example, my Year 10 Set 7 group are a lovely bunch. And a lot of biology, we spent almost an entire term on biology, and fundamental to understanding biology is understanding the structure of the cell. And there are 5 parts of an animal cell that they need to remember, okay? And those words, I think you can agree, the scientific words on the left-hand side are not easy words to remember if you're not familiar with them. So they came up with a little mnemonic, and then I put pictures to it, and we used that to try and remember those words. So rowdy monkeys, nibble, chocolate, chip muffins. You have to take a little pause between the chocolate and the chip muffins so that they know that chip muffins goes together. Okay, so that is their way, that's their access key to remembering that information. And it's really important. Everyone thinks your brains are rubbish at remembering words. They're not as bad as you think they are. The problem with your brains is you can enter information, but they're not your brain isn't an organised filing system. It just gets chucked in, placed in a random location, and the problem you have is trying to find that information again. It's not the information isn't there, it's just locating it. If you can develop a pathway in your students, one little step at a time, to help them relocate that information, they find it much easier to regain. So even the first letters of words give them a way in to remembering that information. Okay, so if you've gone to the trouble of doing that, that lovely little saying was Tyler Mills. He is brilliant at this, by the way, at developing ways of remembering stuff. His brain just works in that particular way. He came up with that, and then obviously it's a question of reinforcing that. So from that point on, beginning of every lesson, if I value this information, I want to make sure they've memorised it, I need to make sure that they know I value it. So beginning of lessons from following, so are we on utility room, Sean? Can we go on to the next one? Thank you. Beginning of every lesson after that is a quiz, and it's a very quick quiz. It might be the first 5 or 10 minutes, 8 to 10 questions, and the first 5 will be what are the first 5 parts of an, or what are the 5 parts of an animal cell. They do that. That's the quiz for a few days, and then we start learning about the functions of those individual parts. Then the quiz gets a bit bigger, and then we move on. So you can see the scores, the numbers they're out of, gradually get larger because they've gone from just knowing the parts of a cell to knowing the parts of a cell and their functions. Then they learnt the entire digestive system, which is about 12 parts in order, and they've gradually added and added and added information. But by saying to them, I'm going to test you at the beginning of every lesson, just quickly, there's no pass or fail, it's just practice and progress, they know that I value them actually memorising that information, and that because I've taught it to them, I expect them to try and remember it. And I don't often think our students actually really realise that revision is about memorising information, so that it is there in their heads to use at the drop of a hat. How am I doing on time, Sean?
About a minute, John.
Okay, so if we just move on into the man cave, we'll find, this is something I did, some of you will have seen this before. Here's some revision notes that I wrote on a random page from the history revision guide about the CU and Red Cloud. Less than 1 minute, thanks Sean. And you could have taught this particular bit of this particular topic, and you could put this up on the board, divide them into groups, get them to write about what they think each of these statements means. So the first one, for those people who haven't heard this before, is the army wanted to build forts to protect settlers. Okay, the army wanted to build forts to protect the settlers, and so on and so forth, and get them to unpick what those pictures actually mean. It's a lot easier for them to memorise information like that than it is for them to try and pick out a whole bunch of words on an unfamiliar topic. Right, I better step out.